Good morning, everyone. So I wanted to take time today and kind of go over my banana plants. When I first started growing bananas last year, I had them spaced out because I saw that they needed to be spaced out because when they grow this closely together, it's not good for them. But after a year of growing them and finally letting them fill in and just go wild this summer, I realized that that's really not the case. In my opinion, I found, for me anyways, that we're in such a hot, humid climate and the water just evaporates so quickly here. But the humidity is really good for bananas. They're tropical plants and we are in a subtropical area, so they need more water sometimes than what we have to offer. And the great thing is that they're right behind where our ducks' coop is at night and where I often drain the water from their small pool every day, twice a day, kind of over here to where the bananas are, which give them moisture. And I found that growing them really close together like this has caused them to shoot up, but also it keeps them from drying out. It allows them to retain the humidity in the air and to retain it on their leaves and the moisture in between them, so they're not drying out during this time where we had months and months of no rain and a month of 100+ degree weather, and they weren't damaged. They did okay. They do have some sun scald around the leaves, but banana leaves, they get damage to them. They die over winter. It just happens in the climate that we're in. It's really not that big of a deal. These are actually really healthy and they're continuing to grow and grow. All of these are different types of bananas, so I can't really remember what all the types are. I know that 2 or 3 of the original parent plants are dwarf bananas. The joke was on me though, because a dwarf banana tree can easily reach 10 to 14 feet tall. Some of the full-size banana plants that we have planted are going to get upwards of 22+ feet tall. So these are not small plants. Even if it says dwarf, it is not the same as a dwarf apple tree that may top out 10 to 12 feet. These are massive plants. These are really big. And even when you think about it, 10 to 14 feet is pretty tall for a plant. Now, I say banana trees, that's kind of slang that we all use, but anyone who really knows bananas knows that they're actually a really large herbaceous plant. They are considered an herb. And the really cool thing is that it's not a tree at all. This is just the leaves. This isn't even the stalk. These are actually leaves. And as the banana grows, these leaves will just continue to open and unfold. And the true stalk doesn't come out until the fruit is starting to be produced, and that comes out as the true stalk of the plant. This is just the leaves kind of growing up and opening up, which is really cool. So these are tall. This is a 6-foot fence, if that gives you any idea of how tall these plants are so far. Last year I did have an issue with when winter came. I didn't properly cut my bananas and I didn't know how to really protect them. And several of them froze. We had a pretty mild winter, and then suddenly it just dropped down out of nowhere and got ice. Because these weren't properly cut at an angle and water got into the top, flies of some nature, I can't remember which type, came and they laid their larvae in there, and that really ate the bananas down. But luckily they sent off new growth this year. And you can kind of see bananas grow in a rhizome, so they kind of put off webbing, and then out of those, new plants will shoot up, which is pretty cool. And these plants can be separated and grow in different areas. I found that for me, growing them in the wetter areas of the yard, because they soak up so much water, is fine. Now, we do have times where our yard holds a ridiculous amount of water in the back, but realistically, the more plants you plant, then the more water they're going to drink. And these are just going to take off. But the really cool thing is they're right up against our concrete, so the concrete is kind of giving them some warmth and heat throughout the winter and other seasons. And now that they're close together, I find that the water retention is better. I also think it's going to give them protection during the winter, just letting them grow like this. And my plan is when it starts to get really cold out to kind of maybe make a greenhouse lean-to and put over them just to keep them nice and warm, to make it through that just month or so of cold weather that we have, because that's really, there's only about a month out of the year that's too cold for these plants. And even a frost blanket might work. Now, if you don't have any of that available, one thing that you can do is take a heat lamp and place it down on the ground, and that should help keep the bananas nice and warm. And you can even throw a frost blanket over with that heat lamp inside. Obviously make sure that there's nothing touching it, make sure it's high enough off the dead grass, it's not going to catch fire, but it's just a good way to keep your plants through the winter. Now if you're in a really cold place, that's not going to work. I'm in about as far southeast Texas as you can go, almost, so we're right near the water. We are a lot warmer than most places all year round. It's a much milder winter than most of the United States experiences. Also, I found last year, all of this grass is new growth from this year. This area used to flood really bad, and what we did is come in with several yards of mulch and lay it down. And you can see mulch still in here where it hasn't broken down yet. There's still some in here. And all this fungi has grown, which really helps all of the plants that I'm growing. This is bird's nest fungi, which is really helpful. And all of this is helping the bananas to stay really moist, but it's also breaking down and helping to form really nice, rich soil, which is really amazing. Another thing that I do that not everybody does, if you hear the bells in the background, guys, that's just the church bells ringing down the road. They ring several times every day. So right here you can kind of see this spot underneath the fence. Now it's been raining non-stop. We went from a severe drought to it raining 9 days so far in a row, and at least into the next 10 days, the forecast shows rain every single day. It rained twice yesterday, and it was pretty good amount of rain. Thankfully, the ground is just starting to soak up all the water, so it's not standing anywhere. But this is connected to where the water source used to be for the ducks. Now, because of the amount of rain there's a lot of algae growing in that area, and it's not as pretty as it used to be, and I've kind of kept the ducks out of it and moved their water source somewhere else because the rain is just beaten down so much that it started to cause a lot of erosion in this area. So right now I'm going to let it rest, but the idea is I'm going to take one of my IBC containers, and if you've seen them in a few other videos if you've been around a little bit. If not, you can go back and look and check out some of the different containers I have. At the bottom of them, they actually have a little spigot, and my plan is to put a water line, connect the water line to that, and have it run from where the water source is now over to where these bananas are, so they can get all the nutrients from when I wash out the ducks' water every day. And that's what it's been doing, is I've dug a hole out and allowed it to slope down, and all of that water has rushed out to where these bananas are. It's diluted enough that it's not causing any kind of damage, not burning them, because a lot of times if you put fresh manure from poultry, it's going to burn the roots of your plant. These are very fibrous roots, and the really cool thing is that they don't seem to nutrient burn in the way that other roots do, such as the apple trees I have or the lemon trees, but also they are, like I said before, growing really close to this concrete, and they're not going to cause concrete damage because they're not tough enough to really break up concrete like any other tree roots would, that would get into your water lines, water systems, that would break your foundation of your house or garage. That's not an issue here. So the cool thing is it kind of double works, keeps the plants warm, creates a nice border for the play area, and it also allows nutrients to flow around the concrete from underneath the fence and water these plants. Now, I said before, it's an absolute mess because it's been raining for over a week, and it's going to be raining for over a week more. It's just nonstop rain now. That's how it is. It's either a severe drought, or we're in experience flooding, hurricane, strong icy weather, or extreme heat for weeks on end. There's really Texas, down this part of Texas, just like king of extreme weather, I suppose. And this is the area. Now, it looks horrible. There's a lot of algae growth from all of the rain and water, and it's just really sloped really bad. There's a lot of erosion. So I will be coming through and putting something in here to kind of keep any more erosion from happening, but I can't do that right now. There's no point in coming and laying down mulch or more dirt or anything else when it's going to be nonstop raining. It's just going to end up with the same problem because there's not enough time for me to put seeds down and allow roots to grow all over this area. I like to keep this area natural. This is the left side of the duck's house. This is their big house. It's massive. And this is the left side of it. So we designed it so this could be covered up. I actually have a panel I just screw into it, and I can open the other side, and it kind of gives me time to allow one area to rest and them eat all the grass, because this is the area surrounding the coop on the other side. So there's a lot of vegetation that they can take advantage of, and it allows this to rest. And then eventually we'll turn this into a garden and let everything grow for a season before putting the animals back in here. However, all of this throughout the season, there was a small pool here, and twice a day I'd come and rinse it out because ducks are really messy. And as I rinsed it out, I'd dump the water out. It would flow this way underneath the fence and go straight to where the banana plants are, and just continuously provide them with water and nutrients over time. And that nutrients is breaking down, and you can really see the difference in growth from our banana trees. So far I haven't had to fertilize. Bananas do like slightly acidic soil, but there is a lot of pine in the mulch, and pine is slightly acidic. So when that's breaking down, it's putting some acid into the soil. But also, I love Microlife fertilizer because I have an acidic one, and it's not just fertilizer. It's fertilizer that breaks down over a 4-month period, and it uses fungi and bacteria to break it down instead of water. It's not water soluble, so it doesn't burn your plants, and it provides those extra nutrients and can also acidify your soil if it's not acidic enough for any plants that you have. Roses, tomatoes, strawberries, bananas, apple tree. I've used all my apple trees. That seems to make a big difference. So it does really kind of help. But this is just a really good way for the nutrients to kind of go to the bananas. And it really has made a huge difference in growth. It's just kind of using everything to work together as a system. If you're going to have ducks in the area, you might as well use their water instead of just dumping it out and it going to waste. Why not use it to water your other plants? Why not, create a system right here that flows to the next system over there where the bananas are? And those bananas are going to grow. They're going to provide food. They provide shelter for other plants when it gets too hot. They provide a excellent barrier, and they're actually the plants that my son picked out. So they provide a learning experience and enjoyment for my children to learn about growing and producing your own food. And it's something fun that we figured we would try. And I highly recommend it. I think creating systems that kind of work together instead of acting like the garden is separate from the rest of your homestead is really important. It's so important to make everything kind of flow, and it really does reduce the amount of work and stress on myself. Now, because this area is like this, the idea is just to connect that water hose and have it drain over to the bananas. So this will have time to rest and regrow, and I already have trellises in place. You can see them everywhere. That way everything can kind of cover up, and it'll just be a really pretty garden space. So don't let this deceive you. This is only a temporary look until all of the storms pass, and then it's just going to completely transform. But our bananas are still going to get the nutrients from the ducts water source, just in a different area, and I think that's important. If you live in a really hot climate, I highly recommend growing bananas close together. It really does help reduce the loss of water, and they kind of shade each other. Now, if you come in and you see that your bananas are diseased, obviously you need to separate them because it's no longer working for their benefit, and you can separate them out. I would always start with the smallest, less established plants and just kind of move them about 3 feet out and let them continue to grow. But this is just one season of growth right here. This is one season. Bananas easily take up to 9 months of growth to be able to produce bananas. We have 9 months of growth, safe growth time here. Really, they grow about 11 months out of the year, and that 1 month that it's just too cold for them, they stop. So if I can provide them enough shelter to get through that 1 month, if we do have too cold of weather, then we're going to be perfectly fine. And this time next year, I'll be able to show you some fruit production and how that works, and maybe even some different recipes, because on the bananas you see people taking these leaves off and wrapping their food around them. I'm going to be cutting some leaves off at some point, probably closer to winter when I prepare them to rest, and I'm going to be laying those leaves down on the grass and in place of cardboard and using them to protect the ground and suppress grass, because in winter grass doesn't grow. And I'm going to start making garden beds for next spring, which is going to be really cool. And I think that this is going to add nutrients to it, but also take away the use of cardboard, because we're not going to need it. This is more natural. It's going to provide extra nutrients. And I think that's just a really cool idea of, well, these leaves are going to die back anyways. Why not use them to benefit my garden and create new growing spaces? So for me, I didn't think that I would ever try to grow bananas. I thought they were too much of a labor-intensive crop, but I've literally done nothing. We were sick the entire summer, so these just took care of themselves, even in extreme drought now and nonstop rain. They are just really taking off, and I'm incredibly impressed with them. And I think that if you, like I've said several times, if you use these systems in place together, then you're not going to have to worry about watering them. You're not going to have to worry about anything, because the mulch is going to retain moisture, and the water is going to flow in here to help water them. And then them growing close together is going to keep them nice and provide a nice humid area for them, kind of trap in moisture. And I think it's a really great thing. I know there are a few things I've repeated, but I can't express enough how important I have found these things to be as we grow these banana plants. So if anyone is in Southeast Texas, I had a really hard time finding information that was helpful to me about bananas, because there really are so many different types of bananas. I've even heard people say that there are no bananas that grow from seed, but I've actually seen small pink bananas that do grow from seed. They're very seedy, obviously, and may not be the best tasting banana, and they're certainly not the same as these bananas. These are actually bananas that are clones from other bananas, and they're more of a commercial type banana, the typical yellow bananas that you see on shelves everywhere. And even though these are quote-unquote dwarf plants, they're very tall plants, and they still produce full-size bananas, which is really cool. These are all Musa, I think is how you pronounce it. It's M-U-S-A varieties. So they're just very standard commercial varieties, the clones that you see everywhere else. They're not anything like a seed variety of banana, or like the previous wild banana ancestors that bananas came from. I haven't had to deal with a ton of pests on my bananas. If anything, I've dealt with a lot of positive wildlife. I've had birds shade themselves underneath the trees. I've had lizards climbing back and forth on here, helping to control pests. I see frogs over here. There's just so much wildlife. Even in this areas where the trees kind of hold some water, you see frogs laying their eggs and everything else. It's just a really cool environment for everything to thrive in. And like I said, until I started really growing my own plants, I didn't even think of how everything worked together as an ecosystem. I didn't think about frogs and lizards being pest control and pollinators, jumping from leaf to leaf in different plants, and also in my banana plants as well. They help pollinate the rest of my garden. They find shelter in the rest of my garden, and bananas are no different. They definitely have shelter here, and they can kind of control any pests that fly around. The only real pest issue we've ever had is those flies during the winter laying their eggs. And during that time, there's really not a lot of anything to help. Birds are hibernating, lizards are not moving around, frogs are not really moving around. There's nothing here to control that population. So that's something I'm going to have to work on myself and try on a couple of plants and see if cutting them at an angle really does help stop water from building up and keeps them alive over winter. But my biggest thing is definitely going to be cutting some of these leaves back and putting a big lean-to shelter or some frost blankets over the top of them during that coldest weather. So this is it. These are the banana plants. This is the area that they're growing in, and it's going to continue to spread out. There were several that had spread out into the duck coop, but ducks, being the good sports they are, ate them all. That's what they do. They eat whatever's in there. So I guess that's another positive thing, is they can provide extra nutrients for your livestock and just make sure that they're not consuming too much of it. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, as everyone may know already. So there you go. How I grow bananas and their system and their uses in a nutshell.